Right. More people are coming. Welcome. So, welcome everyone to this sharing session by the Business School. So, my name is Ralf and I'm the director of the PhD program in the Business School and Field program. And I prepared a very short presentation, maybe like 15 minutes or so, to give you an overview of the PhD program in the Business School. And I think we have 1 hour, so we have also lots of opportunities for questions. Okay, so I think probably you have questions, and I guess it's probably better if you ask these questions and I can help you answering them. I think some of you also attended the earlier session already from alumni. So you already have some idea, at least from one student in the finance program, what you can expect. There are also students online, and I see. Okay. Online, if you have questions or if you have problems, let us know in the chat, or maybe you can switch on the microphone. Okay, so you can also ask questions if you're attending online. So let me give you an overview of what I'm going to do during this presentation. So I think, well, many years ago when I started the PhD, there are, I think, 3 questions important when you start thinking about doing a PhD or maybe applying or where to go. The first one is maybe why you want to do a PhD in business. So I think that's the first question. The second question is why maybe HKUST Business School. And the third question is if you're interested, how you should apply to the business school. Okay, so I'm going to answer these 3 questions. Of course, if you have other questions, just feel free to ask. Okay, I'm here to answer your questions. So, why a business doing a PhD in business? Well, I think, of course, everyone can have their own reasons. But I think, generally speaking, I think there are 3 important reasons to do it. First of all, I think research is fun. At least if you are considering doing a PhD, you think research should be fun. If it's not fun, then you shouldn't do a PhD, obviously. Why is it fun? Well, because, of course, you get intellectually all the time stimulated by colleagues, by research talks, by going to conferences, by reading research articles. And also, when you do your own research and you get some interesting findings, usually that's very satisfactory. Another reason, which I think is a very strong motivator for many people, is that when you do research, you have a lot of freedom. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so you can select your own topics, and you can also work whenever you want to work on it. Okay, so no one is telling you, okay, you have to be in the office in these times. You have to work on these topics. So you can select your own topics, and you can also work when it's more convenient. Of course, it's also maybe challenging because, of course, doing a PhD is a lot of work. So you also need to be disciplined to do that. But you have a lot of flexibility. And finally, I would say it's also very rewarding. I think this also was shared already by in the earlier session. And I think all our graduates, they are able to find very good jobs. I think the sharing that we saw in the previous hours, they focused a lot also on industry and own companies. I think if you look at the business school, most of our PhD students, they end up in academia. Okay, so if you are considering doing a PhD, especially if you're interested to become a professor in another business school, or maybe even at HKUST, but usually another business school, then you should definitely consider HKUST, because at our business school, we really train our students to apply for a job to become a professor somewhere else. As you can see, some students end up in industry, but I would say it's a minority. Okay, so most students find jobs in other universities. So the second question is, why HKUST Business School? So what I think are some of our strengths, and over maybe some other schools. So this is also mentioned, and we're always proud of this, of course, is the ranking. So the Kellogg EMBA program was just ranked #1 in the world. Again, so this has been for 11 years. So why is this important? Well, if you get a PhD from HKUST and you go, let's say, to apply for jobs, everyone in the world recognizes HKUST as a well-established school. Okay, so it will definitely help you in finding a job. Okay, so we're not an unknown university. We are very famous. So when you apply for jobs, people are familiar with this. The final item that I have here is the research. So I would say in Asia, we are ranked #1 based on publications. And this University of Texas at Dallas basically looks at only business school, top business school publications. And within Asia, HKUST is doing very well. We are usually ranked #1. And also, this is within Hong Kong. There is this research assessment exercise where basically all the universities are compared. So this is like every 5 years or so. The last one was in 2020. And again, I think similar to previous times, HKUST ranks #1. So that means that faculty that work here, they are basically trained to publish in top journals, and they are academically basically the best in Hong Kong. So the second reason I would say is the faculty. We like diversity, and we also try to attract a diverse set of PhD students, but also faculty. So our faculty are from many different backgrounds, and also they are trained at prestigious schools. So most of them have PhDs from top schools in the US or Europe, and they are here. So although we are in Hong Kong, of course, but we have an international view. The third thing is that, as I said, diversity is important, and we also try to attract a diverse set of students. So we have students from many different nationalities and also many different backgrounds. So for instance, if your background is not in business, or you're not a business student, it's not a problem. We are just interested in basically strong candidates, and that can also be from engineering or psychology or some other field. Okay, so business, I would say, is already interdisciplinary. So if you come from a different background, you can be very successful in the business. So the fourth reason is, well, we offer basically PhD degrees in all different areas. So from accounting, economics, marketing, information systems, operations management. So anything that you probably can think about or that is related to business, we study. Okay, so we have a broad focus. The PhD program itself, I would say, is quite rigorous. So what is the structure of the program? So during the first 2 years, most of you will do an MPhil, but if you are directly admitted to the PhD program through the HKPFS, I'm going to explain that later, you still have to do the coursework. Okay, so the first 2 years, you basically need to take many courses, and you also encourage to attend seminars, to interact with different professors, and this basically shapes maybe your research ideas. So it's not necessary that when you are going into the PhD program, you already know, okay, I want to study this. It's possible, but during the first 2 years, you get exposed to different courses and lots of research seminars, so you can also develop your idea. And usually at the end of this period, you write your, I like to write a short thesis, okay? And that can be the foundation for your PhD thesis in the end. After those 2 years, most students will really start working on their PhD thesis. So after 2 years, you should basically have an idea what your PhD topic is, and you start working on your thesis and maybe related papers. You're also encouraged to attend conferences and to present your research, so to share your ideas with others. Okay, so we have a budget for all students to attend at least one conference per year where you can present your research. Okay, so that's an international conference. In the final years, that's your 5th year, your goal is to finalize your thesis and to prepare for the defense, of course. And then you start job hunting. As I write down here, academic job hunt. As most of our students, they apply for positions at other universities. Okay, so it doesn't have to be. You can also, of course, go back to industry or start your own company. But within the business school, that's quite rare, I would say, in our school. So the 6th reason is, I think we have good financial support to do the PhD program. So there are different ways to be supported. So the first one is PTS. So these are the regular students funded by the university. And the deadlines of those applications are a little bit later. I think they're usually in January, but it depends on the program. The other one, which is quite prestigious, the person sharing today had this HKUST. So that's the Hong Kong PhD Fellowship Award. So maybe, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but this fellowship is sponsored by the Hong Kong government, and you have to apply earlier. Okay, so the deadline for this application is December 1st. If you indicate that you want to, well, if you apply for that, then there's a possibility that you get supported through this prestigious grant. Then your financial, basically your salary will a little bit higher. Okay. If you don't get a grant, you can still be admitted to the first program, and that is basically our regular PhD program where you get paid through the university. Okay, the program itself is quite similar. There are also some other opportunities to get funding, for instance, the Asian Future Leadership Scholarship Program, and then within the during the program there are all kinds of fellowships that you can apply to if you want to, for instance, do an exchange. I think they were talking a lot about Guangzhou, but it can also be other universities in the world. So you can also apply for those grants. So there is a lot of financial support. So that's, I would say, reason number 6. I had 8 reasons. Number 7 is, I think the business school is very successful in placing our students. So PhD students from the business school, as I mentioned, most of them find jobs at universities, and also universities are very diverse. So we see here universities in Europe, North America, Australia, also maybe in China, within Hong Kong or Singapore. Okay, so I think also Australia, but I just list here a few. So I think most of our students find very, very good jobs, and they get multiple offers that they can choose from, the majority. Okay. And of course, the final reason why you're here, if you're online, I think we always would like to share that. We have a very nice campus with all the facilities. We have a very nice surrounding in Hong Kong if you want to do some later, you want to go to hiking or water sports. I think the campus or these facilities are quite important because, from own experience as well, doing a PhD is quite challenging. So you're working on a topic for, let's say, 4 years or so, maybe 3-4 years, and you're on your own. Of course, you have an advisor that helps you, but you have to do that work. And as I mentioned, you have a lot of flexibility, so you can work whenever you want. But if you're really into that problem, you might have a tendency to not stop working. Okay, so then you just continue during the weekends and maybe at night. Sometimes that may be fine, but I think it's also quite important that you try to relax your mind sometimes. And we have all the opportunities here. And that actually, in the end, makes you also more productive usually. So sometimes you're stuck in a problem, I guess you all know that. But then taking some time off can actually help your productivity. So I would say also make use of those facilities. Are there any questions? Okay, so then the final part is, if you're interested in doing a PhD, at least in the business school, how to apply. So I think in the sharing in the previous session, the PhD student from, I think he's probably from engineering, he mentioned that you should find a supervisor before you apply. And then he mentioned you should write a short email, a short catchy email. In the business school, that is not needed. Okay, so typically students, they don't find an advisor before applying. So you can just apply to the PhD program, and then once you're in the program, you will find your advisor later on. Depends a little bit on the departments. For instance, I'm from the marketing department, and usually it takes 2 years before you find your advisor. So you get assigned to different professors through those two years that you can work with. And then you can also really find out if this is a good match. Do we have similar research ideas? Does this work together or not? Because if you're already stuck with your advisor from day one, and imagine it doesn't work out, it can always happen, of course, then you can always switch. Okay, so we encourage, at least in the marketing department, for instance, to rotate you in the first 2 years. But in some other departments, that might work slightly different. But you don't need to find an advisor before. Okay, so if you're interested, just apply. So, as I already mentioned, we welcome applicants from all backgrounds. So you don't need to have an undergraduate degree or a master's degree from business. If you are a student from engineering, psychology, science, social science, it doesn't matter. You can apply to the business program, and you can also be very successful. Because many of our students don't necessarily have a degree in business. Okay, that's why also during the first 2 years you get coursework. Okay, so if you, for instance, apply to finance and your background is not in finance and you get admitted, you will get these courses to learn more about it. Okay. Also, it's not necessary to have a master's degree. So if you have a bachelor's degree, you can also apply to the PhD program. Okay. So what do you need to prepare? Well, first you need to prepare a statement of purpose. So basically you need to explain a research idea or why you want to do a PhD and what you want to study. So basically we have some idea that you have some research experience. It would also be very helpful if you have some academic references. So there can maybe be some, if you have worked with other professors on a research project, you can ask maybe to to be a reference. Or if you have taken courses from a professor at university and this professor is very positive, supportive, then ask those references. We also require GMAT and GRE, so one of those two. I think these are some tests that you need to take. And finally, there are some English language requirements, I think depending on where your what your background is. But you can find out the details on our website. Okay? So these are the 4 things that you need to think about when you apply. I would say the most important one is the first part. Okay? Because based on that, on the statement of purpose, right, we can identify whether you, well, will you be a good researcher? Are the topics that you are studying are interested in, do they fit within the department, for instance? And based on that, we might invite some candidates for interviews. Right. So, as I mentioned, there are basically 2 admission schemes. The first one is the HKPFS, or the Hong Kong PhD Fellowship. And this is supported by the Hong Kong Research Grant Council. Okay. So this is, like I would say, if you get awarded this, usually it's to those the best applicants selected, and it's really prestigious. You should definitely put it on your CV if you get this. This is a grant that you get for 4 years, and you see the salary over here is 27,000 a month. If you do not get admitted to this fellowship, you can also be admitted to the regular PhD scheme. The salary is a bit lower. It's for 5 years, you can see. But I think usually in the end, this HKPFS fellowship, if you need to have a 5th year, we will find some support usually within the school as well. Okay, so these are the 2 admission schemes that we have. The HKPFS fellowship scheme, if you apply for that one, the deadline is already quite soon, so it's December 1st. Okay, so noon Hong Kong time, usually very strict. So if you want to apply for that, you have to apply before that time. You have to apply to 2 websites, so through HKUST, but also you have to basically apply to the HKPFS website. Okay, so there are 2 applications. So this is the website. The link that's provided here is the HKPFS website. Okay. If you do not get selected for this PS, so if you apply for the HKPFS, but you're not selected for that one, you can still get enrolled through the regular admission. Okay? And the deadlines for that one are a little bit late, although for instance, economics all has the deadline with the same day. So this depends a little bit on what is your field of interest. But most of them have the deadline early next year. Okay, so for instance, accounting has March 15, information systems, the deadline is February 1st. Okay, so there are different deadlines depending on what you're interested in. My suggestion would be, if you already are well prepared, try to apply for the HKPFS, and then if you don't get into that one, you can always apply, go through the regular admission. All right. So I think this is more like my sharing. If you would like to have more information, of course, I recommend so looking at our website where we have all the information about the PhD program as well. You can also email us. We also have here a short QR code. If you would like to get more information to, let's say, if you want to sign up for our some kind of newsletter or information letter, you can leave your details here as well. So this is maybe a brief overview of the PhD program in business. I think many things, of course, have been shared in the earlier session, also apply to business school, but there are some slight difference in detail. Are there any questions from the audience? I'm not sure if I see here. Okay. I see here one question from Roberto, and he asked, what is the age limit required by the prospective PhD student, or is there an age limit? So there's no age limit, so everyone can apply to the PhD program. Even though there is no age limit, I have to say that in our PhD program, usually the students are relatively young. So I would say most of them are fresh graduates, okay, from undergraduate or master programs. There are also some students that have some work experience. That's also, but I would say that's a minority. Most of our applications or in the PhD program, they tend to be on the younger side. I would say fresh graduates, but it doesn't mean that we have an age restriction. Okay, so everyone can apply. We also have some PhD students that have some work experience already, but it's, I would say, the majority comes fresh from college. I hope that answers your question, Roberto. Yes, so I get here a question, do I need a proposal or a statement if I'm applying for a PhD in marketing? And the answer is yes. So you need to write a short proposal or statement of purpose. I think the details of the length requirement are on our website. But you need to have basically propose a research idea. And this research idea is very important in the selection process. Okay, so of course, we look at your academic references, we look at your GMAT scores or GRE scores. But if you have high scores on those, let's say, very good academic references, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be a good researcher. So we will definitely look at your statement. Okay, so the statement is very, very important. And after that, based on that, we will, the university or the departments, they will select candidates and they will be invited for an interview. Okay, so this is the process.
And is the statement more like a research statement or a research proposal?
It's more like a research proposal. Yeah. Any actually more questions here? Okay, so Long asked, I see on the website that there is a pre-doctoral program that leads to the PhD track. Can you elaborate on that? I think you're referring to an MPhil program. So depending on, again, let me move to this slide. If you get admitted to the first scheme, you're directly in the PhD program. If you're getting admitted to the second scheme, then the first 2 years MPhil. Okay, so your MPhil is basically your preparation for the PhD program. So at the end of the MPhil, you get an MPhil degree, but that's also basically a direct way to get into the PhD program. So usually the PhD program has some, so after 2 years, you need to write, you have a qualifying exam usually, or some research paper. And this basically will allow, we will determine whether you can continue into the PhD program, yes or no. And so that's why you need to do so much coursework. In the regular PhD program, we have got something called the MPhil, but that's basically automatically to get into the PhD. So I think you refer to that.
And why would there be a difference in the durations between the two programs? One is 4 years and one is 5 years.
So a good question. So why is there a difference in duration? One is 4 years and the other one is 5 years. So I would say for a PhD in business, especially if you want to get into a good business school and get publications, it takes time. So 4 years is too short. So that's why the business in our school we have 5 years. The PhD fellowship, I think it depends because this is more like government-wide, so it applies to all disciplines, and they basically gave 4 years, which is not sufficient for, I would say, probably not sufficient to finish your PhD. It's possible, but I would say most of the students need more time. That's why after those 4 years, the university, normally speaking, will always grant additional funding. Okay, so but the government only gives you 4 years, and then the school supports, or the department usually supports additional years. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is it really necessary for us to take GR or GS? Because I know why we need to take such kind of exam is to show that we have we are capable to get into the PhD program. I know do we have any other way to show we have such an ability to get into
So the question is, do we need to do a GRE or GMAT, or is another way to show to get into the PhD program? I would say no, you have to take that one. I think this seems to be quite standard for any PhD program in any university possible. They always have a GMAT or a GRE test. So I don't think there's another way, unless I'm mistaken. I don't think there's an exception, right? No, there's no exception. So you have to take it. But see, that I think is these are quite standard requirements that any business school will ask. Yeah.
Share the very similar experience or situation as Tony in the chat group. Is PhD or part-time possible, or do we need to do it?
Okay, so that's a good question. Is it possible to do a PhD part-time? In our university, no. So if you apply to the PhD program, it's a full-time program. Okay, so it really requires full-time work. There are other universities that might offer part-time, but HKUST doesn't. And I think that's also one of the reasons, right? So if you look at our graduates, they end up at universities, I would say 90% or more. And many of them end up also in very, very top schools, like the London Business School, Ohio State University, like very famous schools in the US, in Europe, or in Asia. If you want to get into those schools to become a professor, you definitely need to do this full-time. You cannot do this part-time. So if you're interested in part-time PhD, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but we don't offer that.
Many money can go to the school, take the coursework in daytime, so have a flexible working hour is still not possible. So I'm just trying to extend the study period for part-time.
No, in our university, it's not possible. Then you should, if you are interested in part-time, you should probably look for other universities. There is also something else that we offer at HKUST, that's called the DBA program. So DBA program is also a doctoral degree. It's not a PhD, but it's DBA, but it's doctoral. And those students, they usually have more work experience, and they do it part-time. And Phil is also full-time. Yeah, so our university, PhD, at least in the business school, is all full-time. Yeah. Okay.
So I want to get like I studied for 2 years, and I want to compare it. Will I be compared with the MPhil degree, or there's no degree if I want to for it?
Okay, so that's a good one. So imagine that after 2 years you quit, right? That's what you say.
Yeah.
If you are in the regular PhD scheme, then you are the first 2 years is an MPhil. So if you then quit after 2 years, or imagine you are not, you don't make it into the PhD program because maybe your research paper is not sufficient to get into the PhD program, and there's other problems. Then the advantage of this scheme is that you leave with an MPhil degree. If you're in the HKPFS, you don't get an MPhil degree. So it is possible to quit the program after 2 years. I would say it's very rare because we only admit a few students. So we as a university or a business school are really committed for you to succeed. And of course, we try to select students that are highly motivated to fulfill those 4 or 5 years. But of course, there's no guarantee, right? So there could always be problems along the way, or they could, as I think in the previous session, they also mentioned if you have, for instance, mental problems or something else, right? Or maybe some health issues, then you can always get breaks, right? So we have a lot of support for that as well. But in principle, when you are admitted into the PhD program, our school is fully committed to get you a PhD degree. That's our objective. But yeah, if you leave after 2 years, you can leave with it. And so there are a few examples of that, not too many. Most of the students admitted actually will will obtain their PhD in the end.
I would like to apply for an HKUST. I noticed the deadline is 1st December. Right?
Yes.
But I'm afraid that I didn't have. I don't have enough time to take GRE or GMAT before such a deadline. May I just submit my application first and then I take GRE or GMAT after December, or I need to do so in November?
I think you have to submit everything, right?
If you want to be considered for the HKUST, we only consider complete.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. Yeah, so if you are interested in applying for HKUST, the deadline is December 1st, which is, yes, in 1 month, right? So to write a good proposal and a good statement, you probably need some time. And of course, if you have not done the GRE or GMAT, you also need some time. In that case, you cannot apply. So you have to, if you apply, you have to submit everything. We don't accept part, let's say, only a statement and then later the GMAT comes. Okay. I would also say, if you think about doing a PhD, take some time to prepare. Okay. Starting 1 year later is also not like a big problem, right? So really think, first of all, think very carefully whether you want to do a PhD. Is this really something for you, right? So for many people, it's not for you. It's not for you, right? We will discuss. You will probably find out. So for instance, my reason, I worked 2 years at a company. I thought this is not for me, and then I realized I need to do a PhD, right? So I had some work experience, and I thought, yeah, I worked for a consultancy company, and I was already doing some research for this company to optimize. Actually, I was into logistics, optimize scheduling, but I really thought, okay, we never get like a complete satisfying solution because we have to move on, right? At some point, it's good enough, and then you move to the next project. So that basically already shows I'm really like maybe into research and to doing a PhD. So it takes some time to realize it. When I started my undergrad, I never thought I would do a PhD. I only found out towards the end of my undergrad, and then I took some time. I worked for 1 or 2 years, and then I started applying for a PhD program. Okay, so I'd say if you think, hey, based on this session, the PhD, I really want to do a PhD, but 1 month's time to write a proposal, I don't have sufficient time, then I would say maybe just postpone it to next year. Okay, because it's a very important decision to do a PhD, and of course also finding the right school can also take time. Okay, but yeah, you need to submit the entire application.
I'm wondering if they process from other departments, for example, psychology or commercial.
Yes, so that's a very good question. Let's say during your first 2 years, or at least during any time during a PhD program, when you take courses, can you take courses from other departments or other programs? And the answer is yes, yes. So you don't have to take courses within, let's say, your field. If you're in finance, you can take courses from economics. In fact, you are forced to take some courses outside your field as well. But you have also a lot of choice yourself. So if you're, for instance, more focused on psychology, you can take courses in psychology. You don't need even to take all the courses in HKUST. Sometimes if you see a course in another university, you can also sometimes take it. Okay, so there can be credit transfers, or you just maybe some courses offered in another school. We always encourage you to find those courses. So that's why I think one of the reasons about doing a PhD, you have a lot of flexibility, right? So if you are really interested in this specific topic, and we don't offer necessarily this course, but you see, hey, this university or another department within HKUST has this course, and I want to take it, yes, please do. We will definitely encourage that. Any other questions? I'm going to the, let me see. Okay, we can, I see here Titi writes, you missed the first part, if you can have the PowerPoint. So again, if you are signing up, if you use this QR code. You can leave your personal details, and then we can share you. We will send you. You will be on our mailing list. Everyone who signs up, we will send the PowerPoint. Okay, so please sign up, and then we will send you the PowerPoint slides afterwards. I see here a question from Fan. Yeah, I would like to apply for MPhil PhD integrated program in operations management. Do I need to approach potential supervisors or just directly apply without communicating with potential supervisors? Yes, that's a good question as well, because in the sharing the previous session, they mentioned it's very important to contact a supervisor when you apply. That's for the School of Engineering. If you are in the business school, it's not needed to have a supervisor beforehand. So there's no need to contact. You can directly apply. Okay, so you don't need to find an advisor already. You can just apply to the program. Okay, I hope that answers your question. So, Ja, my answer would be just apply to the program. No need to find a supervisor. Of course, if you know someone in one of the departments at our university, and this person can be your academic reference, of course it can be helpful, but it's not needed. But academic reference is always important in your application. If you have an academic reference from HKUST, this can also be helpful. But I would say, generally speaking, no need to contact people here, unless you're maybe a student from this university or you have done some research projects at this university, then you can use this academic reference. Otherwise, no need to contact. Important dates related to PhD programs. Asif, is this related to the applications? If you are asking about important dates, these are the important dates. So December 1 is an important deadline for each HKPFS. If you just want to apply to the regular admission, so not for the special grant from the government, then the deadline depends on which discipline you're interested in. So, for instance, if you are interested in doing a PhD in management, the deadline is January 15. If you are interested in economics, the deadline is also December 1. Okay, so it really depends on what your interest is. Okay, so these are important dates. So another question is about DBA. Is there a scholarship for DBA HKUST? So I just mentioned DBA. If you're interested in part-time PhD, right? I would say we don't offer that, but we have a DBA program, which is not a PhD, but it's a doctoral business administration, so it's slightly different. This is part-time. I would say that program usually is also quite expensive. Okay, so PhD program you get paid. If you are in the DBA program, you have to pay. So it's quite different audience. But the university offers some scholarships. So the question is, does HKUST have scholarships? The answer is yes. But most students, they pay out of Hong Kong. Or maybe their company pays. Long ask, can HKUST take students from any nationality? Because I think Hong Kong is restricting some nationals to immigrate. Okay. Good question. I don't know if Hong Kong is blocking any nationals. But the answer to, do we want to attract students from everywhere in the world? The answer is yes. Okay. So it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're from mainland China, if you're from Hong Kong, if you're from US, if you're from Europe, if you're from Africa, if you're from Australia, it doesn't matter. We have students actually PhDs from all over the world. Okay, so please apply. And actually, we would like to attract students from all over the world, because people with different perspectives are actually very helpful when you're doing research. Right? So sometimes just asking a question in a different way can be really helpful when you're doing your research. So also when you're in the PhD program and you present your research, it's good that you get feedback from people with different backgrounds. So yes, please apply, and we don't really care about what nationality you are. Okay, so we are open to everyone. What is the impact of GPA on applications? If I can get the ideal GRE and GMAT scores, can I weaken the GPA requirements? So as I think mentioned, so GMAT and GRE, you need to have good scores. It's usually helpful to be selected. But I would say the most important part for your application is your research proposal or your purpose of statement. Okay. If you have a very high GPA, it doesn't mean that you will be a good PhD student. Of course, there might be some correlation, but there are also many examples that students that are not such high grades in their undergraduate degree, they can be excellent PhD students, okay, as well. So I would say, if your scores are not so high, you should still apply. Of course, it helps if you have a high GPA and if you have a good GMAT score. So if you are applying for PhD programs, try to get a high GMAT scores. Of course, if you have a high GPA, it will also help. But the statement that you're writing is very, very important as well as your academic reference. Okay? So a PhD is very different from doing a master's, an MSc, or an undergraduate. Right? You have to produce knowledge, whereas if you are doing an MSc or if you're doing an undergraduate degree, you just consume the knowledge. Right? It's very different. So often they are related. Someone is very high GPA might also be a good PhD student, but it's not necessarily the case. Okay. So I would say focus, especially, well, you should definitely focus on a good statement. So that can definitely also compensate your GPA. It's more important than GMAT, I would say. Is the PhD program at HKUST normally 5 years, 2 years MPhil and 3 years PhD? I would say yes. So even though the HKUST PFS fellowship has 4-year support, usually the school will give you extra support, another year. It's very, very difficult to finish your PhD in 4 years, especially if you want to get a job in a very good other university. Okay, doing research takes time. Preparing for the job market takes a lot of time. Usually the job process is like almost a year. You start applying 1 year before you join the other university. So that's why a PhD program at least needs 5 years. So I would say, yeah, the answer is yes. If I get a scholarship to pursue a MPhil in marketing and later continue to a PhD, will I still be eligible for a scholarship during the PhD studies? And do I still need a statement if I'm applying for MPhil marketing? Lots of questions. So yeah, I would say you can still apply for scholarships during the PhD program. So we have, as I mentioned here, so we have lots of financial support. So I think the first one, the HK PFS and regular postgraduate, right? It's basically your standard funding. But there are also lots of other awards that you can get. So for instance, if you are doing a good job during your PhD, you might get, for instance, the Dean's Postgraduate Scholarship. So you get some extra stipend. Several PhD students, they go, for instance, for a semester or another different period to a different university, maybe because they collaborate with some professors outside HKUST. Could be in the US, could be in Europe, could be in Australia, could be maybe another university in mainland China. But also we have awards for that. So you can apply, and every year several students go abroad. So we have travel grant, as I mentioned. So you can, if you want to go to a conference, we also stimulate that. Every year, especially if you present a research project, we will give you a travel grant so that you can go to the place to present your work and get feedback. Okay, so I'll say, I hope that answers your question. Okay. So post-PhD marketing program. What are the requirements and when do one commence the application? Okay. Again, this is about the application process. I would say definitely check our website because it has lots of details. But again, to repeat, you need to write a statement, you need to have academic references, you need to have a GMAT, and you need to have some English language requirement, depending, I think, on the background. And the important deadlines are over here. So the HKPFS is December 1. And other admissions depend on the discipline. So in marketing, you mentioned, I think, it's January 15. Okay, so deadline. Okay, so Elizabeth asked if it's possible to waive GMAT or GRE, and I think we got a similar question earlier. It's not possible. So you need to have a GMAT score or a GRE. Okay. I think this applies to any business school. They always ask for GMAT and GRE. Okay. I'm sorry, that's not possible to waive. Azif asked to supervise the selection process for international students, and with supervised selection, is it possible to take PhD program admission? Yeah, as I mentioned, you can apply to the PhD program. You don't need to find a supervisor. So most of the students that join have no supervisor. Okay, so it doesn't really matter whether you're from a local student or international student. You will find your advisor in the PhD program. So don't worry about advisors. Okay, of course, maybe when you apply, maybe you can look at what the professors are doing and say, hey, this is interesting, and that might be a good match, but you don't need to find an advisor, right? Okay, are published articles necessary for PhD application? The answer is no. So you don't need to have a publication. Of course, it's always helpful, but I think it's quite difficult to get a publication. Especially in the business program. So I think in business schools, having publications is quite rare. As even during your PhD, it takes usually time, especially because we focus usually at top journals. And getting into those top journals is very, very hard and takes several years. Okay? If you get a publication, then you are almost guaranteed to get a good job. So no need for publications. All right. Yeah, GRE and GMAT are mandatory. I'm in mainland China, a city locked down for more than 2 months. Maybe unable to take GRE or GMAT by December 1. Can I take it after the deadline and submit later? Unfortunately, I think that is not possible. Okay, so as we just mentioned, when you apply to the program, you need to have a complete application. So if you're not able to get the GRE or GMAT before the deadline of December 1, you can still consider applying to the other scheme, but the deadline is usually a little bit later. Otherwise, I would suggest try to take more time in your preparation for the PhD program, and maybe consider applying next year. Okay, applying for a PhD program is not like I write let's say a letter to a company, and then the interviews are, let's say, next week or in a few weeks. A PhD program is very, very different. Okay, so take definitely time to prepare. Yeah, the statement of purpose is more like a research proposal about the specific topic you're interested in. I think our website has very specific details about this. The reason that I don't really provide these details, they could also differ across departments. So maybe for marketing, the requirement could be slightly different than finance. Okay? So please have a look at the specific discipline that you're interested in. So actually, Robert gives an answer to the previous question from one of the students that was not able, from I think Zicheng. It is possible to do the GRE at home. Okay, so even if you're on lockdown, you can do it online. Can I choose to study MPhil instead of a PhD at the end? So I would say, when you apply to the PhD program. You get automatically enrolled in the MPhil during the first 2 years. If you decide to quit after 2 years, you have your MPhil degree. But it's not the idea is usually not that you apply separately for MPhil. I think maybe some departments in our school are thinking about maybe expanding the MPhil program. There are more MPhil students, and then not everyone might necessarily go into the PhD program. But I would say, generally speaking, you apply to the PhD program, and then the first 2 years of this MPhil. Okay. So if you're just interested in an MPhil, then you shouldn't apply to this. Okay, Asif, right, required GMAT score for PhD. I did 18 years education and same score need local and international students. Yeah, I think we do not distinguish between local and international students. So if you are applying to the PhD program, the departments, when they're selecting the PhD students, they don't really look at your background, right? So if you're from let's say if you're from Hong Kong, or if you're from Nigeria, or if you're from the Netherlands, it doesn't matter. We just look at the quality. Okay, we would like to admit the best students, and we think that is the best fit for the school. And we definitely want to hire international students, but everyone is, I would say, treated equally. Okay, it doesn't matter which gender you are, doesn't really matter which country you're from. All right. All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Actually, quite a lot of questions. That's nice. I think if you, after this session, you still are not sure, or if you have questions, please contact us. Okay. Also, if you have specific questions, so if you write to this email address, mphd@hkust.hk, if you have specific questions for specific programs, we can also forward that to the specific programs if needed. Okay, so I'm just giving an overview of the business school, but as I just mentioned, the statements, what, for instance, marketing might look at slightly different things than, for instance, finance, okay, or accounting. So if you have more questions, always feel free to reach out to us. We're really happy to help you. And we want, of course, we want you to apply. Okay, so I don't want to discourage you to not apply. But I also think at the same time, you need to think very carefully about it and prepare very well. Okay? Because doing a PhD is quite challenging. It's very rewarding. I don't regret it at all. But during my time as a PhD student, sometimes, actually, I almost gave up at some point. But I'm happy I did not. Okay? So it's challenging. But if you get your degree, it's really, really rewarding. Okay? And also, of course, lots of fun moments too, but it's hard work. Okay. Okay, there's one more. PhD course only can be taken in Hong Kong campus. You can take your PhD courses everywhere, also from Guangzhou campus. I think at the moment I've not too much experience at the Guangzhou campus because it's just open. But as I mentioned, you can take your courses also even outside HKUST, so you can maybe sometimes get credit from other universities if it's a good course and approved by the program. Okay, so you have a lot of flexibility to select your courses. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, please leave your contact details if you're interested, and we will follow up with the slides. And if we have more information, we can also send this to your email account. Okay, so you can leave your email address if you are interested. Thank you so much. No more questions? Okay, well, I hope to see you in maybe next year already. Looking forward to receive your applications. And yeah, again, let's stay in touch. If you have questions, just reach out. Thank you.
Sorry to venture on the thing again, because I know you answered me very loud.
Yeah.
But I'm just here from brochure here. This is actually interesting. This one, it's I think I'm thinking it about the year, but because of my planning or I did my own thing, so I give up. So I think this is what you said. It's not to 8 years ago.
Yeah, so I think officially it might be on our list.
Yep.
But I don't think we are hiring. I can ask Ring because he did.
I'm looking at people.
Do we have any part-time? Okay, so
Yes. Most of our change from full-time.
yeah, I want to say that. I think the 8 years is also there. Actually, some of our students, like 5 years, is out in minimum. Right? Quite a few students. Bye bye. And sometimes students may take even longer, right? Like, all kind of other reasons, right? You have to finish, I think, in 8 years, like, yeah, because after 8 years, you're already ultimately, 2 years live with university. So yeah, if you're interested in part-time PhD, I would not like this to be very long.
Also, when you said about your experience that you work 2 years and then you did some of the research area and you did very, I'm not sure Australia is right where today is. It is incomplete. I echo that a lot because in my work I also do a lot of things about this kind of research and things like that. But you know that in commercial organization they can't really do all the things. There's a lot of people have a lot of hidden agenda that they are not doing it objectively. That also makes it very strange. I can get it, get it well, I recognize voice and that would be very useful.
Yeah. But I think you really want to do a PhD, a Swiss